Hi Diane, thanks so much for coming in today and interviewing with us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you what we call a behavioral interview question, and basically I'm going to ask you to give me an example of a situation, and then as you're telling me about your story, your situation, I'm going to be taking a lot of notes. So I'm going to be doing a lot of writing, and then as you answer, I'll be asking some probing questions as we go through the interview. And this should take about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So, if you could, tell me what your approach is to cultivating and maintaining strategic client relationships.
Sure, absolutely. One particular example that comes to my mind, I started working last year with a group called Neurofocus, and it was an industry I'd never been exposed to before and a type of position I'd never worked on before. So immediately I needed to get up to speed on the business and their needs and the type of candidates that they were going to need to be successful on their team.
Okay. And so how did you go about getting yourself up to speed and really digging in to understand the business? What kind of steps and actions did you take?
Sure. It started with introductions to the hiring managers, spending time introducing myself, understanding their roles, what some of their pain points had been, and also attending some of their town halls to learn more about the business as a whole, where it sat within the organization, how it was growing, how it was evolving. And then also I spent time doing my own research outside of my time in the office, just reading about the business of neuroscience, what was happening these days, what were the trends. It also helped me to better understand what are the publications that people would be drawn to if they were interested in a career in neuroscience.
That's great. That's wonderful. And then as you started to, I guess, educate yourself on the business, would you then turn to your individual hiring managers and share that information with them, and would they reciprocate? Was it something that was reciprocated all the time, or did you find in some situations that that it wasn't reciprocated?
Sure, absolutely. So generally speaking, it's an ongoing dialogue, right? I'm providing feedback in terms of what my understanding is of the position and the business and what I'm hearing in the meetings and the town halls. But people get busy, and sometimes my hiring managers had projects that they were heavily involved in, or very tight dynamic travel schedules that had to be accounted for. And so, our conversations, exchanging information, weren't always high priority. And in those situations, I needed to sometimes loop in the HR business partner, just to see if there's something I'm not understanding, if there's an internal change that's happening that I don't know about that they have visibility to.
Sure.
And then sometimes it just came down to putting time on someone's calendar and saying, look, I know you're really busy right now, but it's important for both of us that I fully understand what's going on in your business.
And did you feel that when you would do that, that they felt that since you clearly were making an investment and wanting this to be a partnership, would they then reciprocate?
Sure. Most of the time, yes. There were situations where sometimes it continued to be a challenge to connect, again, for a variety of business reasons. And in those situations, generally speaking, I would go to the hiring manager and say, look, perhaps it doesn't make sense for us to be having a weekly call. What makes sense to you? Help me set the cadence, because I want to stay in communication with you and make sure that we're sharing information, while also understanding that you have a lot of other things on your plate right now. And generally speaking, that was well received, because both of us were involved in that partnership of deciding what works best in the end.
And speaking of what works best in the end, in terms of the value that you were providing, when I think about cultivating a strategic client relationship, I think about where are you adding value. Would you often find yourself in a position of asking them, or advising them, I should say, to change direction in the search? So your consultative approach, here's what I'm hearing in the market, I think we should, did that ever happen? And would you say that falls under this category as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of one specific example where we had a position we were working on for a long time, It was many months, and we just couldn't seem to find the right fit. And in one of my calls with the hiring manager, really for the first time, he used the word customer service. And I said, okay, wait, we haven't talked about that before. How important is that to this job? And that really came out as the most important piece of the job. And so we shifted the focus of what we were looking for. Instead of saying, okay, we need someone who's been exposed to this kind of equipment and these kinds of technical experiences, you're telling me that the customer service piece is the most important. And we actually ended up hiring a referral whose background was largely in customer service, and I hear he's doing very well.
Okay, great. That's a great example of how you sort of took that relationship and changed the direction of the search for a successful outcome. Great. Is there anything else you can think of when it comes to sort of maintaining those relationships that you'd like to share with me? Maybe another example or?
Sure. Well, I think it's always good to do a diagnostic, to your point, looking at the end result. We went through an exercise end of last year where we went back to our hiring managers and asked, who were your stars this year? Of the people that you hired this year, who would you really say ramped up quickly and is outperforming their peers? We got a lot of very positive feedback from that experience and some negative feedback as well. And we synthesize all of that information and again drill down to what made this person successful, what made this person struggle, and how can we then adjust our strategy moving forward to make sure we're targeting more of what makes the person successful.
Great. Terrific. I think that'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina.